Hello, and welcome to the Powder Room, where we discover the message within our messes. I am your host, Ivy Ashley. In today's episode titled Uncovering Daddy Issues, we're peeling back the first layer of this discussion by defining what it is beyond the cliches and social media memes. We'll also discuss why acknowledgement is just as necessary as it is powerful. Hey guys, it's so good to be with you this week. And before I get started, I'm apologizing up front. As you probably can hear, I am nasally, I'm stuffy, I'm coughing because, again, at 50, allergies has raised his ugly head and I don't like it. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm dealing with allergies at 50 and never have before now. This is so crazy to me, guys. But anyway, I'm going to press through it. If I just happen to sneeze or cough, hopefully I'll be able to edit it out. But if not, I love you guys and accept all my mistakes for love today, okay? Anyway, have I said how grateful I am for this platform lately? Well, if I haven't, I am saying it now because as much as it may be entertaining and encouraging for you, I am so glad that I accepted the challenge to create this space for us to be able to be vulnerable. Because for me, this isn't just about likes or clicks, it's about impact. And when I think about the things that I have been through, I hope my experience becomes a roadmap to you on how you can do things differently and begin your healing journey much sooner than I. There's absolutely no reason for anyone who listens to this podcast to perish for lack of knowledge. Everything I have, I'm going to give the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I don't care who has anything to say about it because I believe that this is what God is calling or requiring of me at this time. And so I'm going to give you guys everything that I have. Sometimes we as Christians, we tend to wear a mask and pretend that we are, say, saved 24/7. But guess what? We make mistakes. I make mistakes. And the thing to remember is not to wallow in those mistakes, but be grateful for that sin consciousness that you have that reminds you, hey, that's not right. And as long as you have a repentant heart and an open spirit, God is there for you. So I'm in this for the long haul, guys. You can't get rid of me. I'm not going to allow you to. So let's get into this discussion today. So I want to lay down just a bit of foundation before we get into the core of what we're talking about today. So uncovering daddy issues. When something is uncovered, it means we're finally giving a voice to something that we've spent years being silent about. Now, let's sit in that for just a minute because when you get to a space that you're ready to take the covers off of something, it is not a decision, first of all, that you made overnight. Typically, there is something that led you to the point where you are ready to become up close and personal with whatever issue it is that you're dealing with. Remove the covers so that you can see it for what it is, not for what you have pretended it to be over however many years you decided to ignore it. Okay, I know I said a lot right then. So let's just so let me just give you a minute to, digest that before I move any further because this is straight truth today. So you may not be dealing with daddy issues, but there are some other issues that you need to contend with today and allow this to be the space that you finally surrender and be open about where you are concerning that situation, and let's deal with it today. Okay, because it is impossible to uncover what we fail to acknowledge. Let me say that again. It's impossible to uncover what we fail to acknowledge. And I know many of us as women, we want that healthy relationship. We want to know what it looks like to have healthy love in our lives. But it's so hard for us to mirror that because it's not something that we have ever experienced. Man, that's good. So when we say daddy issues, we're often reducing something incredibly layered and painful to a punchline or a cliche. But in this discussion, we'll discover it's more than that. Okay? We're being real today. We're not pretending. We're not putting on any airs because we've done that in the past. And where has that gotten us? Absolutely nowhere. Also, let me dispel a misconception because daddy issues is not a female issue. Men can be just as damaged by absent and inconsistent fathers as women are. But we're not talking about men today. I'll leave that discussion for a man because I don't know how daddy issues show up for men because I am not a man. So I'm dealing with the woman's perspective today. And the thing that makes us believe that women are more plagued by daddy issues than men is because we tend to be more often shamed for it. But this discussion today is not about blaming fathers, but it's about understanding the impact that it has made on daughters. Another thing this discussion is not about pacifying daughters either, because at some point we have to take accountability for our own actions. We can't continue to blame or point the fingers at dad for what he did and not turn those fingers right back around on us for what we've done. Okay, especially as it relates to the relationships that we've mishandled because we failed to deal with our own daddy issues. Y'all sure y'all ready for this today? Because, hey, I'm coming down your street. I promise I'm coming. Get ready. So, why are we discussing this now? A couple reasons. Well, I wrote a book on daddy issues a couple years ago, and so that's one of the reasons we're talking about it. But more importantly than that, June is Father's Day month. And as quiet as it's kept, many of us still struggle to celebrate the men in our lives who have a proven track record of being amazing fathers because we are still stuck on what our dads did when we were 10. And it is time for us to become unstuck. So I want to set the precedence for this conversation and let you know that the tone here is non-judgmental. The tone here is full of compassion. The tone here is one where it is safe to reflect, where it is safe to receive, where it is safe to think, it is safe to acknowledge, and where it is safe to change. All right, so let's get into some definitions. Y'all know I love to start with a good definition. So, in my book, Daddy Issues Love Lessons in Healing from Toxic Relationships, I define the term daddy issues this way: it's the unfavorable behavior a woman exhibits as a direct correlation to the dysfunctional or non existent relationship she had with her father. And yes, I did create that definition myself. And I wrote that, didn't I? So I believe the framework for daddy issues is born through two things: fatherlessness and inconsistent fathering. So with fatherlessness, um, that's just simply put not having a dad in your life ever. So for those who never met your dad, don't know what it is to even have a dad present in your life, the framework for daddy issues is born through that, not having a father at all. And then the second one is inconsistent fathering, which I think is sometimes worse than not having a father at all. Because either one of two things happen. You start off with your father, and for some reason, he disappears, or he's in and out. You see him 6 months, he disappears for 2 years, he comes back, builds a relationship, make a whole bunch of empty promises. Everything looks good, everything glitters, is actually gold, and then he disappears for 6 months. So you kind of had this in and out relationship. So at the time, you built this relationship with him, and it seemed like it was, a strong foundation being built. Something happened, the rug was taken from up under you, and your dad is gone again. Also, there's another thing that I would consider as inconsistent fathering, and those are fathers that are available but not present. Because there are a lot of people who lived in the house with a man that they said was their father, but they still had no relationship with him at all. He brought home the check, and that was it. He may have been cold. He may have been distant. You may have never heard him say, I love you. You may have never, received a hug from him. You may have never heard congratulations. I mean, all of that. Inconsistent fathering. He was available. He was in the house, but he was not present. So you have fatherlessness, you have inconsistent fathering, in and out, and then you have inconsistent fathering, available but not present. Either way, daddy issues is written all over those three scenarios. So how does this show up in adult relationships? And I'm just going to run through these. Of course, abandonment wounds, because if somebody is in and out of my life. Of course, you know, you're not consistent enough for us to build anything that comes close to being real or that comes close to being stable. So I become accustomed to you leaving. And I believe those of us who have experienced abandonment with our fathers, we begin to make provisions for abandonment because that is what we have come to expect. Is it right? No, but it's what we're accustomed to, it's what we're comfortable with. So you begin to make accommodations for your dysfunction because dysfunction is what you know. Dysfunction is is what you can relate to. So when somebody shows up for you, when you finally get in a relationship and a man shows up for you and he says exactly what he says and means it and his actions are lined up with that, he validates you and doesn't look for things from you, then you may find yourself because you're not healed and you're not accustomed, and because you've made accommodations for abandonment, you don't know how to receive what real love looks like, and you may begin to sabotage what's good because you've made provisions for what's dysfunctional. Sounds crazy, but that's real life, y'all. It is real life. So, how else does this show up in our adult relationships? Fear rejection. I said seeking validation, overachieving to feel worthy. I have to perform for you so that you can see my worth, because if I don't do something to make you stay or stick around, you're not going to see my value or find value in me just being myself. How else does this show up in our adult relationships? Struggles with boundaries or self-worth. You ever played that game when you were maybe on a playground and you pretended like you was getting ready to fight somebody and you know you were not going to fight anybody? So what did you do? We would draw this line in the sand and we would dare anybody to cross the line, because if you cross this line, you was gonna get the business. And so what did the other person do? Because they was big and bad enough to do whatever it is they wanted to do, they crossed the line. And when they crossed the line, 9 times out of 10, the other person did nothing but what? Draw another line in the sand and dare that person to cross that line. And that is exactly what we do when we struggle with boundaries. We create these false boundaries and then we dare somebody to cross them, and when they do, we adjust our boundaries instead of sticking fast to the initial boundaries that we have created. Why? Because we're making accommodations for dysfunction. What else holds true? Trust issues, people pleasing, and dating patterns, negative dating patterns, that is. So all of these things are what shows up in adult relationships when you don't deal with your daddy issues head on. I'd like to share a little bit of my personal journey with daddy issues. And for the sake of today's topic of uncovering daddy issues, I'm kind of just going to give an intro, but next week I'll dive in a bit more detail. So for the first 8 to 9 years of my life, I had a very consistent relationship with my father. I mean, him and my mom were not married. They did not live together, but I saw him almost every day for the first 8 to 9 years of my life. And he was very active. He showed up. He took me places. We weren't a family from a legal standpoint, but we were a family. So I became very accustomed to him being around and him being in my life. I was such a daddy's girl, and I loved James Ashley to his core. He could do no wrong in my eyes, and that is how I wanted it to stay. But one day, without reason or cause, as far as I'm concerned, he vanished into thin air. I mean, he was there one day, wasn't there the next, and that's all I could tell you at the time. I was given no explanation. I had no reasons. I just know my daddy was no longer in my life, and I was torn to pieces. I mean, I did not understand what was going on. And so, if I can describe how this impacted me, it was as though somebody ripped my arm from my body, and the people around me still expected me to function as though nothing had happened. That is how I can articulate now how it made me feel then. I mean, this man was a part of my life. So, could I survive without my arm? Absolutely. I could survive without my arm, but you can rest assured that my arm initially being ripped from my body caused trauma, caused bleeding, caused infection from not being treated. It caused a whole lot of stuff that I internalized, and it did not show up until I became an adult. Now let's sit with that for a minute. How many times have things happened in our families that we did not address? And I'm speaking to parents. They were not addressed, and no counseling was applied. No discussions happened. Nothing. Imagine how traumatic that is for you. Please don't ever in life subject your children to that. Please don't. Get these babies help, for the sole reason that some of us did not get the help that we needed when we needed it, and now we're left to deal with our own devices as adults. We're still dealing with trauma from childhood because we were expected to function as adults, but we were kids. Oh, Jesus help us. Lord help us. And so, yes, I internalized a lot as a kid. Trauma taught me how to keep secrets, y'all. And there are still some things that I've gone through in my life that I still have not told anybody. Still dealing with stuff. So, how did this shape my self image? It was in the toilet. How did it shape my self esteem? It was in the toilet. How did it shape my relationships? They were in the toilet. Just throw them all in the trash can, y'all. I'm so serious. I am so serious. My beliefs about men and love in the toilet. Might as well finish it up. I expected men to leave. This is what trauma taught me. I expected men to mistreat me. I expected them to lie to me. Did I verbalize that? Absolutely not. But my expectation was based on the way I allowed them to treat me. Thank God for deliverance. And you will be delivered too if you're willing to walk through this process. But we're just uncovering today. I just want you to acknowledge today. One other thing I want to share. So, what was the defining moment for me that helped me to realize the impact? There were two. And the first one, I'm going to wait until share that one next week. But this one I will share now. When I approached 40, I was at a place in my life where I needed to do some internal work. I needed to do some introspection. I needed to take inventory over my life, over my decisions, because turning 40 it's the big 40. It's a big transitional period, and I needed to take assessment over where I was and compare it to where I wanted to be. And it was at that time that I realized that even though I was independent, I was successful, I was, had traveled to different cities, lived in different places, thriving in education, thriving in my career. But there was just one area in my life that I felt I was stuck, and it was my love life. And that was when I realized that I was stuck in a pattern of choosing men who were just like my daddy. So, why is acknowledgement important? Why is acknowledgement powerful? Because of the mere fact that once you begin to acknowledge it, it opens you up to be able to do something about it so that you won't repeat the cycles, so that you won't continue to have unhealed wounds, oozing blood and pulse and sickness because of your thought processes as it relates to love and relationships. It stops the bleeding from you choosing emotionally unavailable partners. It stops you from being in denial that shows up as strength or shows up as I don't need a man. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm just going to go ahead and say this. I don't care how unhealed I've been in my life. I have never gotten to the point where I said I don't need a man and I don't want a man. The devil is a straight fool and a liar. Because I've always wanted a man. And quiet as it's kept, because of what Eve did, it created a desire in us for a husband. But y'all ain't ready to have that conversation. All right, I'm not gonna go there. Read your Bible. Read your Bible. So awareness is the first step toward breaking generational cycles and creating healthier love. Now let's talk about some of these cycles. Now I'm sure that we are all familiar with the song "Papa Was a Rolling Stone." But for some of us, it's not just a lyric, it's what's real in your family because it describes your granddaddy, your daddy, your uncles, your brothers, your cousins who got kids all over the community just creating broken homes, a cesspool of daddy issues. Yeah, let's talk about it. Let's talk about these cycles. If every marriage in your family ends in divorce, it's not coincidence, honey. It is a pattern. If all the women in your family marry alcoholics, it's a generational curse that needs to be broken, and the change starts with you. So when we do not uncover daddy issues, when we fail to acknowledge any issue, any trauma, what is the cost of not uncovering daddy issues? What is the cost of not acknowledging whatever other issues or traumas that exist in your life? Childhood trauma unaddressed turns into adult dysfunction that is suppressed. Let me say that one more time for the people in the back. Childhood trauma unaddressed turns into adult dysfunction that is suppressed. It also has a mental health impact. We're talking depression, we're talking anxiety, we're talking schizophrenia, we're talking about all of these mental health issues that exist. You can't tell me that some of them are not because of unaddressed childhood trauma. So uncovering is the first step because it's important to name your pain. Remember, we're giving voice to something we've been silent about. So you have to name your pain. If it's not daddy issues, what issue is it? Then once you are aware or you allow awareness in your life, it opens the door to confronting and healing. And then at that point, the inner work can begin. And that, my dears, is an amazing place for us to put a pause on this conversation. Believe me when I tell you, acknowledgement is the beginning of freedom. And I'd like to leave you with this thought as a recap. How did daddy issues become an insult to girls when it's men who failed at being present? Ladies, the time is now to release the shame because it is not your fault that your dad did not show up. It's time for you to acknowledge it. I invite you, listeners. This is an awesome subject to reflect on, to get your journals out and write about your own experience. You can have a personal therapy session today in the comfort of your own home. I encourage you to please share your experiences with me on social media. I would absolutely love to hear your stories. And check this out. For the first 5 people who share their stories with me about daddy issues, or who share with me what out of this series has influenced you or impacted you the most, I have a free copy of my book, Daddy Issues, Love Lessons in Healing from Toxic Relationships. Tell me your stories. Tell me the impact this subject is having on you. I want to hear your stories. You can reach me on Instagram on my new page, the powder room pod. That's POD, the powder room pod. I also have a Facebook page, the Powder Room Podcast, and you can also email me at consultivya@gmail.com, and that is consultivya@gmail.com. This has been such an amazing session, and I hope that you have enjoyed it as well. Please, please, please join us next week. So we confronted daddy issues this week. We uncovered daddy issues this week. And next week, we're going to confront them. Remember, you are always welcome in the powder room, where we discover the message within our messes. Take care.